One of Britain's wars began because a sea captain walked into Parliament, pulled a glass jar from his coat, and placed his own severed ear on the table. That sounds insane, but by then, Britain was already becoming something far more dangerous than a kingdom. It was becoming an empire that would one day control nearly a quarter of Earth's land, rule more than 400 million people, and command a navy so powerful, its fleets outnumbered the next two empires combined. The sun did not set on British lands, because somewhere on Earth, its flag was always flying. But Britain did not build this empire with tea, trade, or polite handshakes. That came later. First came blood. First came cannon fire. First came kings, rebels, pirates, storms, and wars that stretched across entire oceans. For 400 years, every victory made Britain richer. Every war made its reach longer. And every enemy it crushed pushed one small island closer to ruling the world. So how did a rain-soaked island on the edge of Europe teach the world what empire really meant? To answer that, we have to go back, long before Britain ruled the seas, long before Britain ruled the oceans, long before red coats marched across distant continents, long before its flag flew over a quarter of the earth. These islands were soaked in their own blood. There was no empire, no United Kingdom, no mighty navy, only kings, clans, betrayal, and war. In England, crowns were won with steel. In Scotland, proud nobles guarded their borders with blood. In Ireland, powerful clans fought to keep outsiders from taking their land. Across these cold islands, families rose, fell, betrayed one another, and killed for power that never seemed to last. For generations, war was not something people feared. War was simply life. And while these islands tore themselves apart, Spain was crossing oceans. Portugal was building trade routes around Africa and deep into Asia. Gold, silver, spices, new worlds, riches beyond imagination were pouring into their ports. England watched from the sidelines. Smaller, poorer, weaker at sea, late to almost everything. And for a while, it looked like it would stay that way. Then something happened that changed everything. For the first time in generations, England stopped fighting itself. After decades of brutal civil war known as the Wars of the Roses, one family took control, the House of Tudor. And they did something England had almost forgotten how to do. They brought order. One crown, one government, one growing idea of power. Money began flowing into shipyards instead of battlefields. Ports grew larger. Blacksmiths forged cannons instead of knight armor. Sailors began replacing horsemen. The island was changing. And then, a young queen took the throne. Red-haired, sharp-eyed, surrounded by enemies. Her name was Elizabeth I. She looked across the ocean and watched Spanish ships return home loaded with treasure from lands England had never touched. And somewhere in that moment, a dangerous question began to grow in her mind. Why should Spain own the world? That single question would pull England into its first true fight for global power. And nothing on these islands would ever be the same again. That question did not stay in Queen Elizabeth I's mind for long. It became a plan. Then it became a war. By 1588, England was facing the most feared military force on Earth. Spain ruled oceans, controlled treasure from the Americas, and commanded armies across Europe. Its king, Philip II, believed England had become a threat that needed to be crushed. So he built something the world had never seen before. The Spanish Armada. 130 ships, nearly 30,000 men, cannons, soldiers, priests, supplies, a floating fortress sent to cross the English Channel, land an army, and end England's challenge forever. On paper, England should have lost. Its ships were smaller, Its crews were fewer. Its money was limited. But Elizabeth understood something Spain did not. A smaller force can still win, if it moves faster. So England changed the rules. Heavy ships were replaced with lighter ones. Cannons were built to fire faster. Captains were told not to board enemy ships, but to stay moving, keep distance, and keep firing. And then there were the privateers. Men who sailed under England's flag, but fought like pirates. None was more feared than Francis Drake. He attacked Spanish treasure ships, stole silver, burned ports, and sent riches back to London. Every stolen coin helped build England's growing war machine. Then the Armada finally arrived. Dark sails filled the horizon. Church bells rang. People ran to the cliffs to watch. And under the cover of night, England made its move. Fire ships drifted silently toward the Spanish fleet. Panic spread. Anchors were cut. Formations broke. Then English cannons opened fire. And when the battle ended, the storms of the North Sea finished what England had started. Spain sailed in as a giant. It limped home broken. England survived. And London learned a lesson it would repeat for centuries. If you control the sea, you control the future. The problem was, now every empire in Europe was watching. England's victory over Spain changed everything. The island that once fought just to survive was now thinking bigger. Much bigger. If the sea was the future, then England needed more than warships. It needed money. It needed trade. And in 1600, Queen Elizabeth I signed a document that looked simple enough. A trading license. A business deal. The birth of the East India Company. On paper, it looked harmless. Merchants. Ships. Silk. Spices. Tea. Cotton. Silver. Nothing more. Or at least, that was the story. The truth was far more dangerous. This was not just a company. It was a private army with a royal seal. It could build ships. It could raise soldiers. It could make deals. It could start wars. And soon, English ships were sailing farther than ever before. They crossed around Africa. They entered the Indian Ocean. They dropped anchor in India, Southeast Asia, and along the coasts of Africa. At first, they came with gifts. Gold. Cloth. Promises. Then they came with demands. But England was not alone. The Netherlands wanted the same trade routes. The France wanted the same ports. Powerful Indian rulers, Mughal princes, and fast-moving Maratha horsemen had no plans to hand over their land to foreign merchants. So the first collisions began. Trading posts became walls. Warehouses became forts. Ports became battlefields. And contracts slowly turned into threats. If a ruler said no, cannons often spoke next. By the mid-1700s, company soldiers were no longer guarding goods. They were fighting full wars. In places like Bengal, taxes, trade, and power were now tied together. Profit became policy. Merchants began making choices that once belonged only to kings. And some of those choices would change millions of lives. By now, Britain was no longer trading with the world. It was learning something far more dangerous. It was learning how to own it. By now, Britain had learned how to fight, how to trade, and how to turn profit into power. But one war would take that power and turn it into something much bigger. An empire. In 1756, Europe exploded into a conflict so huge that many people now call it the world's first global war. The 7 Years' War. This was not one battlefield. This was many. Europe, North America, the Caribbean, India. 4 continents burning at the same time. British ships chased enemy fleets across open oceans. Soldiers marched through frozen forests in Canada. Cannons fired in tropical islands filled with sugar and smoke. Company troops fought in the heat and dust of India. And everywhere Britain fought, France stood in its way. For 7 brutal years, the two powers battled for trade routes, colonies, ports, and people. Then the fighting ended, and Britain won. France lost colony after colony. Britain gained control of Canada. In India, French influence began to fade, while British power grew stronger than ever before. For the first time, global rule did not feel like a dream. It felt real. Then, just over 50 years later, Britain faced one more giant, Napoleon Bonaparte. He had conquered most of Europe. Kings feared him. Armies followed him. Entire nations bent to his will. But in 1815, at the Battle of Waterloo, Britain and its allies brought him down. And with that victory, Britain became something no kingdom had ever truly become before. Master of the oceans. Its ships guarded nearly every major trade route on Earth. Its banks paid for wars across continents. Its factories poured out iron, cloth, weapons, and steam-powered machines. And on maps around the world, more and more land turned red. At its height, the British Empire stretched across more than 13 million square miles. 1 out of every 4 people on Earth lived under British rule. And then Britain made the choice that every great empire eventually makes. It started believing it could never fall. For a while, it looked like Britain had done the impossible. Its ships ruled the seas. Its merchants controlled trade. Its armies marched across continents. Its flag flew over lands most people in London would never see. But empires do not break all at once. They crack. Quietly. Far from home. The first major crack appeared across the Atlantic. In 1775, 13 British colonies in North America stopped asking for fair treatment and started preparing for war. Farmers became soldiers. Merchants became rebels. Towns became battlefields. This was the American Revolutionary War. London believed the rebellion would be crushed in weeks. Then weeks became months. Months became years. British troops fought through forests, snow, mud, and hunger. Ships crossed the ocean carrying men, weapons, and supplies at enormous cost. And in 1783, the unthinkable happened. Britain lost. Its colonies became the United States. It was painful. It was humiliating. But it was survivable. The empire moved on. Or at least, it tried to. Then came India. 1857. The British East India Company had spent decades building power, training local soldiers, and growing rich from land it did not own. Then rumors began to spread through the sepoy ranks. New rifle cartridges, soldiers whispered, were covered in animal fat. Pig fat. Cow fat. For Muslim soldiers, it was offensive. For Hindu soldiers, it was unthinkable. Anger turned into fear. Fear turned into rage. And rage turned into open rebellion. This became the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Cities burned. Rail lines were destroyed. Families fled. Executions multiplied. For months, Britain fought for survival against the very army it had trained. And in the end, Britain won. But something had changed. Trust was gone. Rule became harder. Punishment became harsher. Fear became policy. And every year, London spent more money, more soldiers, and more ships just to hold what it already owned. Then a new century arrived. And this time, the enemy would not be rebels. It would be industrial war itself. In 1914, Europe exploded. One gunshot in the Balkans lit a fire that soon spread across the world. And when the World War I began, Britain entered the fight with confidence. Why wouldn't it? This was the greatest empire on Earth. Its navy ruled the seas. Its factories built weapons by the thousands. Its flag flew across every ocean. And when London called for help, millions answered. Men came from Canada, from Australia, from India, from lands across Africa. Farm boys, miners, students, horse riders, rail workers. Some had never seen snow. Some had never left their villages. Now they were crossing oceans to fight for a king many had never met. For 4 years, trenches filled with mud, smoke, rats, and blood. Machine guns cut down entire lines of soldiers in minutes. Ships vanished beneath freezing waves. Entire towns lost a generation. And in 1918, Britain survived. But survival came at a terrible price. Millions were dead. Cities were grieving. And the empire's treasure was draining away faster than anyone wanted to admit. Still, Britain stood. But only for a moment. Just 21 years later, the world caught fire again. World War II. This time, the danger came even closer. Bombs fell on London. Children slept in subway tunnels. Fires lit the night sky. In the Atlantic, supply ships vanished beneath enemy submarines. Across the empire, colonies sent everything they had. Men, food, steel, oil, rubber, medicine, hope. And in 1945, Britain won again. But this victory felt different. There were cheers in the streets. There were flags in the air. But behind the smiles, the empire was exhausted. Its money was gone. Its debts were crushing. And for the first time in centuries, Britain needed help from United States just to stand. Then something even more dangerous began. Across Asia, across Africa, across the Middle East, people who had fought for the empire no longer asked for freedom. They demanded it. After 400 years of expansion, Britain's retreat had begun. And this time, there was no going back. After 1945, the empire did not fall in one great battle. There was no final cannon shot, no last king, no single flag coming down. Instead, the empire began to break apart, piece by piece. In 1947, India won its freedom. Then came Pakistan, then Ghana, then Nigeria, then Kenya, and then dozens more. One by one, colonies became nations. Old maps were redrawn. Borders made in distant offices suddenly became real lines between families, cultures, and peoples. In some places, those lines brought peace. In others, they became fault lines that still shake the world today. But something strange happened. Even as British rule faded, many parts of the empire stayed behind. The English language stayed. Railways stayed. Ports stayed. Banks stayed. Court system stayed. Parliament stayed. Even cricket stayed. And right now, in 2026, nearly 2 billion people still use English in some form. More than 50 nations remain connected through the Commonwealth of Nations. Trade routes still follow old imperial paths. Navies still study ideas first shaped by British sailors. Time zones still reflect a world once measured from London. Laws written under empire still guide courts across continents. And that may be the wildest part of all. Britain set out to control the world. Instead, it built systems the world still uses long after the empire itself disappeared. Because empires rarely truly die. They simply change shape. So the next time you fly across continents, speak English with someone on the other side of the world. Study laws shaped by old naval powers. Sit inside a parliament. Or drink tea that travels along routes once guarded by warships. Remember this story. The British Empire was never just about conquest. It was never just about kings, queens, maps, or red coats. It was a 400-year experiment in what happens when one nation learns how to turn war into trade, trade into power, and power into a system so vast that even after the empire faded, much of the world kept running on the roads it built, the laws it spread, and the language it left behind. And the truth is, many of us are still living inside that system today. So here's my question for you. Which war do you think changed Britain and the world the most? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you think Britain taught the world how empire works, wait until you see the civilization that taught Britain. the empire of roads, legions, and iron discipline, the empire called Roman Empire.